From Barangaroo Studios, the AusBiz COB is the key stuff you need to know about the day in business and finance.
Hello and welcome to the COB on this Monday. I'm Andrew Gagan. Great to have you with us as we round out what has transpired over the course of the session. As you can see, it's been a good one. The CBO 200 finishing up close to 0.5% there, in fact. So let's get to the themes of the day. Well, it has been a broad rally when you look at across the market, in fact. However, a bit of a different story emerging in commodities, very mixed, and that's that contrast we've seen there. Gold in particular, the goldies suffering today, and just some moderate gains there for BHP, Fortescue ending slightly negatively, whereas Rio has been the outperformer essentially, along with some of those lithium miners, Pilbara, doing well today. Also, and Trump 2.0, he is back, or almost, in fact, in 12 hours' time, he'll become the 47th president of the United States. And we'll get into that in just a moment. First, though, let's take a look at some of those sectors that have been moving today. I mentioned them, the mixed miners, if you like, there, and that's where many of them finished. As I said, Fortescue essentially flat on the day. And South 32, that was our stock of the day. We'll get to that shortly as well. That ending more than 1% higher. Rio, pick of the bunch there. Elsewhere, the banks, are ending positively there with some modest gains, with CBA and Westpac up around 0.5%. In the tech space, mostly positive, although Zip has come off. And let's get to some of those updates we've heard today. I mentioned South 32 did report an increase in production for aluminium, copper, silver and nickel, but a decrease in zinc production quarter on quarter. The company reaffirming its FY25 guidance for all operations except its Mosul aluminium project in Mozambique due to unrest there. Also, IGO is saying it expects to post a loss out of its Kwinana lithium refinery due to a substantial pre-tax impairment. And Karoon Energy shares, they're down after the company flagged to the market that its part-owned Hudat West exploration well in the Gulf of Mexico will be permanently abandoned due to unsuccessful drilling. Insignia Financial, that bidding war continues. The company saying it's offered bidder CC Capital due diligence for a limited period of time. And casino operator Star Entertainment, its tales of woe continues, having plummeted another 17.5% today. That's after revenue was, this is quarterly results show revenue down 15%, and the company has said a lack of liquidity representing a material uncertainty in the foreseeable future. So let's get some analysis, and to do that we are joined by Josh Gilbert from eToro. Josh, welcome back to AusBiz. I haven't caught up with you for quite some time, so a belated Happy New Year to you. And of course we're on the cusp of a new Trump presidency. Why don't we start there? In fact, this time in 12 hours, he will become the 47th president of the United States. How would you describe how markets have positioned themselves? And interestingly too, of course, it comes on a market holiday for the US.
Yeah, Andrew, great to be with you as well. Look, it's going to be a pretty crazy week. I think that's just pretty fair to say. And look, maybe it's a good thing that we have markets closed on Monday, right? Because when we sort of tend to see this sort of maybe political change in the way that sort of Trump is coming in, maybe it's a good thing that we can't sort of see investors sort of letting emotions take over. No doubt there'll be volatility throughout the week, but you know, if markets in the US were going to be open tonight, then no doubt that they would have moved pretty significantly. But look, I mean, anything from the meme coin that Trump has just sort of launched to sort of these, you know, policies that could be coming through, I think it's just basically setting the stage for what is going to be maybe a chaotic presidency all throughout. But look, as I say, market swings, you know, these types of things, it's going to be common throughout the week. I think we're probably going to see a little bit of pricing come through and maybe some uncertainty around those proposed policies, his stance on trade, infrastructure spending, tax reforms, China, all of that. And I think sometimes when we get a lot of news flow, it can feel like a bit of a roller coaster. I think probably the biggest thing that I can say is, look, I think it's about sort of maybe taking a bit of a step back, maybe trying not to focus too much on sort of the political side, try and focus a little bit more on sort of the fundamentals, and sort of maybe try and really let sort of emotion take over the next week, because a lot can sort of happen. We're going to see a lot of headlines. We're going to see a lot of maybe movement in sectors, again, anything from financials, healthcare, infrastructure, industrials. We could see plenty of movement across the board. So again, I think it's about just sort of keeping that level head. But it is certainly going to make for a pretty interesting week, whether that be, as I say, even today we're seeing him having conversations with China, and apparently that obviously going pretty well, and that's obviously seen Chinese stocks sort of rally today, and broadly pretty positive there. Which again, go back to last week, and you'd probably say Trump coming in at the start of this week would be broadly pretty negative for China. So it just goes to show that, as you say, you can't really front run policy, and it's just sort of about sort of trying to really sort of settle down and not let emotions take over.
Yeah, I guess it's going to be a question of whether he walks the talk as such and actually follows through on what he's said and what he's threatened, if you like, particularly as far as trade is concerned. Josh, you mentioned crypto. Which assets do you think are most likely to be volatile in the first few days or weeks, if you like, of the Trump presidency?
Yeah, look, we know that he is obviously a pro-crypto president. That's why we sort of saw a new crypto asset from him within the last sort of 48 to 72 hours. And obviously the big part of his presidency is going to be sort of Gary Gensler, the SEC chair, sort of moving aside, today in the US, and alongside that, we've got some other big names, moving alongside him, some high profile names in big positions moving along. So plenty of change in at the SEC. And I think what that does, I think it makes a more favorable environment for crypto assets. We're probably going to have clearer regulations that's, expected to come along. Again, that will take time, but I think ultimately it will encourage some greater adoption of the asset class. Really, at the moment, if we go back within the last sort of 72 hours, we're really seeing Solana, which is essentially where Trump's new asset is actually listed on. That's where sort of the coin is actually built. So that is sort of had a great sort of 72 hours over the weekend. I think Bitcoin is obviously sort of that main asset that we'll probably look towards. Trump has obviously been a very big advocate of Bitcoin. Obviously, we've heard him sort of speak about having it as a strategic reserve. We know that the US owns Bitcoin on its, in reserves already. So it's just whether or not, how that's implemented. But look, he's clearly not holding back. The fact that he's launched this coin already just sort of goes to show that he is very, very pro crypto. So I think it's going to be a very exciting year for crypto, but we certainly will see volatility. To answer your question directly, Andrew, though, I think what we're probably going to see here is a lot of positivity for some of those smaller assets, what we would usually call as altcoins, particularly because I think they'll have we'll have a greater understanding of sort of regulation, the way that they sort of trade, in terms of the decentralized finance, these types of things. I think it'll be much more supportive under Trump. We've already seen within the last sort of 24 hours a huge number of ETF applications submitted, given that it's expected to have a much more pro-friendly SEC chair. So I think the biggest reaction might come from some of those smaller assets, and it might be the time where we see altcoins start to sort of really rally. We would call it altcoin season, given the performance that we've seen from sort of Bitcoin. And obviously in that sort of 72 hours, we have seen Bitcoin back above $100,000. So very broadly positive for crypto, but yeah, I think those altcoins will certainly see some movement.
Yeah, well, I mean, that'll certainly favour those speculative investors. Outside of crypto, what would you be watching, I guess, for more sort of the traditional finance, perhaps those investors seeking a safe haven? I mean, for instance, where do you think gold's likely to go?
Yeah, look, I think the view of gold at the moment is a pretty positive one from a safe haven asset too. We have obviously central banks continuing to buy at record paces, and also the fact that we're probably going to see some sort of dollar strength as well. So I think especially if we look at the view that Trump's policies coming in are sort of really going to reignite inflation. Again, we had that CPI print last week that was broadly pretty positive for markets, but ultimately, longer term, the impact that his policies may have, we would probably maybe get a bit of a better idea of that over the next sort of couple of months, what he's looking to sort of roll out, and how that may sort of affect those markets. I think from our perspective, really this week, we'll probably look to, over the next sort of couple of weeks, we're going to be looking to those financial names. Will we see sort of banks and financial institutions benefit from that sort of deregulation, rates staying slightly higher. Obviously, industrials, you've sort of spoken about large scale spending on roads, bridges, and obviously other infrastructure. Obviously, that could be a big boost for, construction materials, etc. Defense, obviously, is going to be sort of a big one. I think that's going to be really important. We know that he's obviously a big fan of the US military and spending there, and we've seen sort of drone stocks and things like that move over time. Then on the other side of that, we can obviously think about healthcare as well. Policies around drug pricing, or even tech shares. If we see anything around technology regulation over that time as well, could see that sort of come under scrutiny, or we could see it lessen. Right, under Biden, we saw sort of maybe this crackdown on big tech and this monopolization. Trump is all for sort of business first, everything at home and those types of things. So maybe, especially given his sort of relationship with Elon Musk as well, who's obviously very pro technology, it could be a positive or a negative either way. But I think those are probably some of the key sectors that are worth keeping an eye on over the next couple of weeks.
And Josh, equity-wise, of course, we are in the midst of earnings season in the States. Now, Netflix coming up too. What are the expectations?
Yeah, I think we can kind of forget about that. We've got a few earnings nipping through. Obviously, we had the big banks last week, all of them delivering, really good numbers, all coming in above expectations, which was pretty broadly positive for the start of earnings season, given that they've had some weakness on earnings over the last sort of year or so. Look, it will actually be the last time that Netflix reports its subscriber numbers for the quarter. So that'll be a pretty interesting number. Again, the focus there is to sort of try and look into sort of revenue growth and look at sort of, the actual fundamental numbers rather than those sort of subscriber numbers, because that is the number that has moved markets in the past. Looking for about 15% year-over-year growth in revenue to about 8.8 billion. That was the last quarter to about 10.1 billion this quarter. 10 million new subscribers in the quarter as well. That would take them to over about 293 million total subscribers. I think it just really cements its place as the leader of streaming, right? It's gone up. It's had some competition from Amazon. It's had some competition from Disney. But the content at the moment they're putting out is just solid, right? At the back end of last year, we had the Jake Paul and Tyson fight, which was one of the most watched things ever on Netflix. We had Squid Game, which was obviously a hit series coming through at the back end of last year as well. So they're putting out some really good content, and we know that content will drive value for the business, and that is obviously going to be driving ad revenue as well. So the content is really, really key for them. They're getting more into sort of live sports, whether that be WWE, whether that be NFL. And I think that's really important. That is helping to drive ad revenue. That is helping to drive margins. And ultimately, their bottom line is growing. But they are coming off of the back of a great year. Shares were up 80% last year, up about 150% since the low of about October 2023. So doing really, really well. But as I say, they're going to sort of keep trying to sort of put through higher prices. That needs to come through them justifying that through its content lineup. So it's got to keep delivering. When they have failed to deliver content in the past, that's when shares have been affected. But for me, it's the undisputed streaming leader, and I think that position will help them to keep driving growth for now. But as I say, from moving forward, we want to hear from Netflix the numbers that we should be focusing on, because the last time we're going to hear subscriber numbers, we'll only just be getting that at the end of the year in those yearly reports. So big focus now to revenue and earnings, which I guess it makes a fair bit of sense.
Well, and speaking of unmissable TV, if you like, you're going to be watching the inauguration live. You're going to get up for it, or you're going to watch it on replay?
I think I might put it on replay, Andrew, to be honest. I was at the Australian Open this weekend, and I was on a 4:30 flight, or I was up at 4:30, so maybe watching that on replay. So.
Yeah, that sounds fair enough to me. Hey, Josh, always great to catch up. Thanks for joining us, Toro.
Thanks, Andrew. Have a great week, mate.
Let's now go to our stock of the day. As I mentioned earlier there, South 32, and to get across, we heard from David Lane from Orbnet and Mark Morland from Team Invest.
I think today's production update was quite a good one. Across the board, it was fairly positive. The only slight miss was copper as far as their production numbers were concerned, but even still, they were up 9% on the last quarter. A couple of the highlights there were actually silver, where their production was up over 20% of the forecast and up 86% over the last quarter. And that's at a time when you've got the silver price actually doing very, very well. So, quite a good result.
The return on equity has been consistently below 10%, which is our minimum. There's been times it's been above, but its return on capital is currently 3.6 and return on equity is 4.2. So that fails. We wouldn't even look at it for us. It's at 28 PE at the moment as well, trailing, which is right at the top of the red, which is the top quartile of its range. So it's even though I'm not sure what the price has done lately, but it's probably because the earnings have come down, but the share price hasn't come down as much. So we wouldn't be interested in it at all.
So let's catch up with the market leaders at the close, see the best and worst. Iris, it is up more than 5%, similarly with Tabcorp. Some of those tech stocks, Life 360 among them, up 4.5%. Megaport and Pro Medicus back on the winners list there. Negatively, no surprise that Star Entertainment takes top billing for all the wrong reasons. It's down some 17.5% after that warning to investors. Karoon Energy also after its update off more than 5. Clarity, Vault Minerals and Paladin coming off today as well. In the small cap space, Findi making an acquisition, another acquisition in India. Its shares up 23% today. Ioneer also doing well, up a similar margin. And then we have some of the smaller stocks. And I'm not sure why Star Entertainment's back there. I guess it could always classified as a small cap. Brockman Mining, MTM, Aravella and Demerix on the losers list today. All right, so what is overnight? Well, there's no escaping it. It is the inauguration of the President and Vice President of the United States. Happens, in fact, in 12 hours' time, as of the time now. It is about 4 a.m. Eastern Australian time. And also pointing out too that markets will be closed in the States for Martin Luther King Day. Elsewhere, the Economic Forum is happening. World Economic Forum in Davos. Locally, we get quarterly updates from BHP, Liontown, Northern Star and Hub24. Some New Zealand business services there will be released as well. So, recapping where we're finishing the day this Monday, up 0.46% on the COB 200. Thanks for watching and listening, and we'll get right across all that reaction to the inauguration of Donald Trump. Tomorrow, market reaction, the way stocks move, certainly here locally. As I said, US markets will be closed. Thanks for joining us.